Blockchain. Boo! Blocky bee.
What's up, Brett?
Excited to be on. You know, this is the All In podcast, right?
It's like we're like the half in podcast because we're just a bunch of like crypto rejects. We haven't made it yet, but we're figuring it out kind of energy. But we're making it our own. We're making it our own. That's what's important.
I am very happy with my life. And the definition of made it is very subjective.
You mean
all right.
held hostage?
So, yeah. Adam coming out here hot saying, none of us have made it yet. I'm like, all right, man. Speak for yourself over there, right?
David, how do you feel? David, how do you feel?
I feel like I'm on the road, I'm on the road.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good energy here today. Coop got a haircut. Lucas is in Texas. We got blockchain Brett. David's feeling good. I'm wearing the old bellow hat. There's a lot going on so far, but we're going to make it happen. We're going to make it happen.
Maybe one day we'll make it if we're lucky.
If we're lucky.
We keep this energy up.
It's a long journey.
What's going on, Brett?
Cycles.
Welcome to NAC.
Thanks for finally having me. I feel like I've been watching my close friends on a podcast for seasons without ever getting invited.
Lo and behold, there's some big news to share, which is why we wanted to bring you on this podcast. Brett, what's been going on in your life recently? You got anything you want to share with the group here?
Yeah, it's been exciting. I'm juiced about it, and I've been a big fan of 1Conf for a long time, and Nick, and it's already learning a lot on the team, learning a lot from Nick, seeing how he thinks and how he operates, and everyone thinks very highly of him. I'm learning since joining. I've gotten a lot of feedback that he's a legend. So good validation. And I'm spending a lot more time in the trenches, I'd say. Went from my own fun having to do a lot of things, like not just investing, but also the other parts of running a fund. And now I feel like I've been just being able to spend more time in the trenches, researching more companies, talking to more founders, playing with more products. So it's been awesome.
Love that. I think for a little bit of context for people that don't know Brett, so prior to joining 1Confirmation, Brett was leading Palm Tree Crew Crypto, a crypto fund investing in consumer crypto. I think we could say it was Kygo's investment fund, or related to Kygo in that capacity. I guess I'm curious, Brett, what was the path to joining 1Conf?
Is that why you're excited that that PTC investment pod you did it for Kygo, huh?
I don't know if that's
public.
Yeah, the true colors are coming out here.
Wow.
You're gonna need some VIP tickets, Brett.
You never mentioned
Down here
him
in
before.
Austin.
Now we're on a podcast. It's all you can talk about. It's crazy.
all I talk about? I'm trying to give some context on what you were doing before
That's all,
1Confirmation.
before you came on here, he mentioned, he was like, all right, guys, I don't know what I'm going to do when Kygo comes to town next time. I'm going to have to buy tickets. He just couldn't stop talking about it.
Just hit up Daniel Allen if you're looking for tickets, all right?
Yeah, he's got you.
Yeah. Anyways, my actual question was like, what can you tell us about that like journey from PTC to now like 1Confirmation?
I mean, it's I feel like it's like a continuation. Try to do more of what I've been doing. Natural progression, I'd say. Yeah, I mean, like I've focused on consumer crypto since early 2021. I mean, I feel like I've always kind of focused on consumer crypto in a sense where I started collecting NFTs in like 2018, and that kind of became consumer crypto. I'd say like the NFT space sort of became that. I feel lucky that I was able to focus on that, investing in that. Investing is a lot of fun because you don't really have to like build one company. You get to, which is not easy. You get to ride in multiple. Yeah.
Yep. And that's why none of us here on this call have made it. And Brett's on his way to making it,
I get to just ride on the sweat of Cooper, Lucas, and Adam here. Not David, unfortunately.
Not me.
Yeah.
Although maybe that's a good thing. We'll see. You haven't made it yet, according to Adam.
But I think Lucas's question is interesting because a fund joining with another fund is not a very common occurrence. You know, you see GPs move places sometimes. You see, partners move to different funds or whatnot. This very much was like, you're the guy at PTC Crypto. We also got John Gall over there, legend, but it's a very small team. And so just to kind of add some color on there, I think Lucas's question is also like, what was that transition process like? And how did you come to the conclusion that this was the best fit for you in your future investing career?
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, I guess, yeah, I was saying just more so the focus area, investing area stays consistent and like a natural progression. Like 1Confirmation is like one of the earlier and better like funds in the consumer crypto space, I would say. Not just that, but like they've done a bunch of the leading projects like OpenSea and I mean, I think you guys know. And so it's a cool, like a natural progression. For as far as like going from fund to fund, it sort of works like I kind of just finished deploying the Palm Tree crypto funds. And so instead of basically doing another fund, Nick asked me to join and was flattered and took the opportunity. And I think I think you're right. Like you don't see it often. It's really unique. Like you think the liquidity market for 101 CryptoArt or 101 music NFTs is tight. Like this, I think this happens even less often.
I wouldn't go that far.
What GPs joining other GP? I think it's the point is it's really rare, really unique opportunity, and it's kind of It's so on the fun side too. It's like a kind of natural progression. It's like at some point I would have try to raise another fund, and it's kind of instead of doing that, now I'm joining up with Nick. And
would you say that you've made it, just proverbially speaking, in the investing landscape?
No,
you haven't made it.
no.
Well, Adam, what do you think? Do you think he's made it by your radar, or what do you think?
I think across many variables, you definitely have made it. But there's always room to grow. There's always room to grow.
I think some people look at you and think that too, Chevy. So
I think it's all perspective. It's all perspective. Exactly.
Right. It's engaged.
I would also agree with David's perspective that Chevy's made it. I would agree with Adam's perspective that Brett's made it. But I would also have to agree with Adam's perspective that I have not made it personally.
Right.
I'm on my way to making it. Reject, I believe, is the word that was used.
I got a question for.
Well, I guess
Brett.
I have sort of made it because I finally got on the podcast with my friends. I mean,
there it is. There it is.
There we go.
You have made it to the podcast. That's the extent of you making it. Is your
Wait, David, what's your question?
I got a question for Brett. So I've never met Nick in person. Big fan of his Twitter. Big fan of the new videos he's been doing, the walk and talks, and kind of one of the first things you started when you got on the pod today was talking about how Nick's a legend and people really admire him and appreciate him. Like, what are some aspects of like the way he thinks that you've noticed that are unique in like the first couple months of working with him? Like that you're like, oh, never thought of it this way, or what's it like to work with him?
Yeah, I feel like it's hard to put a finger on it, honestly. I feel like it's different. I'm getting used to how he thinks about different categories, I would say, like different areas, like sort of unique takes about. So I feel like some of the key things is like bridging. He does like a lot of like the purist versus tourist thing, like bridging existing crypto native things to mainstream things that have an eye there. Goes back to that a lot. So I think that's just like learning how to think about that in different categories has been one thing. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of case by case. I feel like a lot of the work we've been doing now, I've been just kind of proposing things, seeing what he thinks of those, and getting his feedback on it, and then kind of going forward for that category. I can think to myself like, oh, like this is probably would be his take on that, or just sort of, take that learning and use it myself when I'm thinking about stuff. So kind of an onboard in that sense.
Also give a big shout out to Mike Tomaino, brother of Nick Tomaino. fellow partner at 1Confirmation there, very active on Farcaster, very active in the trenches on DGen, and someone that I've come to call a close friend over the course of the last year or so. So, I feel like there's a good camaraderie in terms of the team that you're joining there. And honestly, it doesn't feel like it's a big team given how large of a fund that they're managing, how successful they've been in the past. So definitely a very tight-knit crew. And, you definitely would have needed to have made it, hypothetically speaking, to be able to join a team like that. And so I think it speaks very highly of your caliber as well, Brett.
It's definitely been surreal. I would say, like, I've been a fan for a long time. But I mean, we've become friends over the past like handful of years.
And co-investors.
And yeah, co-investors. He's also an investor in my fund before. And we've hung out a bunch of times. And yeah, but like I didn't expect it. Did not see it coming, honestly. It was like we were just catching up and sort of like just dropped the seed at the end of the call and was just like, what just happened? But yeah, so it's been surreal, but now I'm settling in. I'm ready to do some deals.
Would you say it's taken some of the weight off your shoulders of thinking about having to raise a new fund in the current climate of venture right now and being able to join an already existing fund that you can deploy out of? Or how do you think about that aspect of the business?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I don't know if I would have started raising another fund yet. I mean, the market is not great.
Specifically, the market probably for consumer crypto as well, huh? Because this is something that we talked about with Peter on our last episode was funds investing in consumer crypto right now. There's really not a lot of dry powder going around, and there's not a lot of interest from LPs to necessarily invest in consumer crypto right now.
Yeah, I was probably going to lean more on like distributions and getting through distributions before going for, to raise another fund. So, yeah, I mean, it's not fun. It's not like fun to fundraise, I would say. So, and it's time consuming. I mean, like it takes, I don't know, almost, I feel like you end up spending almost a full-time job doing it. So then you have to work like 2.5 jobs in order to have enough time to actually do the job you're supposed to do, of like investing. So, yeah, I mean, going from a smaller fund to a bigger fund too, that's something, getting used to, like just size, like size of the check, size of, the overall structure, like portfolio construction.
And I think one other aspect just to touch on is that people, I think, have a misconception that VCs just have infinite money and that it's very easy to get money for funds and to be able to deploy funds and whatnot. And Brett, I know that you and David crossed paths in Pennsylvania at a conference, I believe, and I know you went out to like Singapore and stuff like that. Can you just speak very briefly about the process of raising capital from LPs and what it actually looked like to get a fund off the ground in the first place?
Yeah. What's the process of getting a fund off the ground? I mean, you kind of have to get through a certain amount first, right? The first close is kind of like the daunting first task of a fund. It's like, what's the size of the fund going to be? And then the first close needs to be like a significant amount of that, in order to kind of get the belief and the trust that you're going to close the rest of the fund. So I feel like that is just a really hard thing to do. And I think like part of my approach was being a specialist. Like I naturally was already obsessed with like culture and crypto, consumer crypto, like on all all the different areas there. So it worked out. I leaned into that. Like I just became a specialist. I think there were there's a lot of generalist funds, and then as categories broke out, there's like infrastructure funds, there's DeFi funds. And there wasn't really at that time. I don't think there were any like kind of consumer crypto focused funds in like early 21. So, one definitely like that was kind of like a differentiator. But it's also tough because there's dependency in the category. Because like if you look at the consumer crypto, space, it's kind of early still, right? Like I mean, how many huge successes are there? I mean, if you want to see the successes, you could just look at the 1Confirmation fund pretty much. But like, I think, there's there's still really like content and social and gaming and right, like the kind of non-financial use cases. I would say the financial ones. It's interesting because I at first I was kind of like, there's a lot of info, there's a lot of DeFi, there's not enough cultural consumer industry focused use cases or investing in that area. So at first I was kind of like carving out DeFi, like kind of like, oh, like DeFi isn't consumer. And then it's sort of really swung into, I mean, stable coins is like a massive consumer opportunity. So it's interesting how like DeFi actually has become, I mean, you can even say it like poly market is kind of like, I mean, prediction markets are sort of DeFi-ish, maybe are DeFi. So yeah, it is interesting how like that actually has now sort of re-entered. Although most of the stuff I focused on has been not financial, I would say.
One area you've been obsessed about for a very long time is collecting content and supporting creators. And I think this is also a really good shift into a different part of the conversation of this new article that you published, the collector funnel, which I'd love for you to give a brief overview on. And I guess more specifically, like you wrote that collecting content is becoming a new behavior in crypto. And I'm curious what you think is accelerating that shift.
Yeah. I mean, this is the crew that knows collecting content right here. I mean, I lean on David, not as much you, but
David didn't make it.
well, I lean. Oh man, the roast of
I actually do want to give you a shout out, Brett, because you are like the person that pilled me on putting content on chain back when I was at Bankless. I remember this distinctly in Solana Breakpoint, November 2021, peak bull.
Lisbon.
Yeah.
We were in that house, and Brett
Fire
was
Eyes
like,
Airbnb.
Yeah, Fire Eyes Airbnb, and Brett was
Thanks
like, all of Bankless's content needs to be on chain, and I was like, shut up, Brett, that's ridiculous. And slowly that idea just started eating at me, like more and more, like every day. I would
that
just
was
start
when
eating at me.
You bought 101 music NFT. You bought that Grady music NFT.
Bought that Grady NFT, and that just killed me. It took me down the rabbit hole. And I just want to give you a shout out.
The massive success from that 101 music NFT just reeled you in.
Yeah. So I wonder where that ETH is now, Grady. Let's get Grady on the pod.
I have a funny story about that I'll share after the podcast.
I appreciate that. It's crazy to watch you end up doing this. I remember telling Adam, like, dude, you need to build a podcast NFT platform, like, around then. And then
Adam,
you figured it out.
I went to B2B SaaS analytics. What do you mean?
He came to me with Bella. I was like, please build a podcast NFT platform. Was pretty much my response. And then I saw Lucas, you're doing it. I was like, great. I can just do it with Lucas now.
Perfect.
But yeah.
I think the question
for
there,
me,
the question there is like, why have you been so pilled on collecting content for 5+ years now? Like, what's the thesis?
I'm still bullish, right? Like, I think it's evolving. And you guys are on the forefront of it, really. So
except for David,
this is the group to talk about it with. Except for me.
I'm not doing anything over here.
David, you can sign off.
I'm gonna go. I've already made it, so I don't need to worry about these kinds of things. So I'm just gonna go to the hot tub and just chill.
Yeah, feel free to just turn your video and mic off and
yeah. I'll be at the hot tub, boys.
Just listen in. Take notes. So yeah, I mean, for me, it started with CryptoArt, like hands down. I mean, I felt it firsthand. I started clicking CryptoArt in 2018. Everyone thought, like, at the time there was very few people. I don't know, maybe 50 people or something like that. In 2018, it was $50,000 of volume of CryptoArt. Like, it's just tiny. And the questions people would ask themselves or say on Twitter was, can digital art be valuable? And like, right click save as. That thing isn't worth anything. I can just download it. And like, it's crazy to think that was where we were at, because now it feels like we've made it like a super long way from there. But that was the case. And I mean, I was buying digital art on chain before it was called NFTs when they were $50. The X copy was going for $100 around that, a 101. So it's just like, I think that I experienced it. I bought a lot of crypto art. And I felt like the success from that, felt like the rewards from that. And then it started making me think about, okay, this is just a start. Like, you can put digital art on chain. What else? What other types of media? What other types of content can you do this with? And it just became like, I think that was really like the beginning of the thesis. Was like content coming on chain, any sort of digital object, like this sort of business model of a collector model, which is sort of similar to like a gaming model, right? Where like in a game, you're trying to monetize your biggest users by them spending them like the whales, right? That kind of is a collector model, really. And so how do you kind of bridge that to more things that don't have as great of a model for artists and for the end user? And I started thinking about more around the music space and video and just like all these different content platforms, and how pretty much the creator is like the cost of goods sold. And they make money from subscriptions, or like, all you can eat subscriptions, take all the content you can get for $10 a month, or we'll feed you ads. And then we'll do the math at the end of the day, see what like we think our gross margin should be, and then like whatever we can afford to give out to the creator, we will. And so they're kind of, and a lot of these platforms have been really well, and they're huge. I mean, YouTube, like, Spotify, like there's obviously a lot of big content platforms. And so like there's a big market. And then so if you can improve the business model behind these markets, then maybe it could be even bigger. And like, I think, for instance, like look at music versus art is a great example. Like traditional music and art does about $80 billion in sales a year. Music does about 40. So it's about half the size and volume. But there's way more music listeners. And so I think that kind of juxtaposition shows like, what if you this sort of collector model can work there? And I think it can. I think the biggest limitation was being able to own things online, which is like what you now can do with NFTs, digital objects, online, on-chain media, whatever you want to call it, is like a new format for audiences, fans to own and to have ownership, which equals potential upside in creators. And I think that's evolved a lot. And like a lot of what the collector funnel article is about is how that's evolved, and what the spectrum of the new kind of spectrum that's been created is, right? Going from where we started one of ones through to one of one of X, like generative art, to or limited editions, to open editions, to coins, and kind of like what it's basically creating a funnel, right? I mean, I look at it where the top of the funnel is higher edition, more liquid, lower price, and the bottom is where your biggest collectors, biggest fans, most long-term, looking for the most upside kind of investors end up being towards the more scarce things. And I think that artists will end up using a spectrum of that as well. Like it's kind of like similar to how a influencer on Instagram is trying to funnel you into their Patreon to start to pay for some perks and then get you like deeper and deeper into more exclusive content. So I think like that we're kind of starting to model that. There's like enough layers in the, I call it on-chain content. I mean, just, the on-chain content space, or just like the kind of NFT space in general, that is enabling this whole thing. So I think that's kind of the premise. And then there's a bunch of stuff in there, right? Like I think the big areas is just talking about
Well, yeah, there's a lot to uncover in the article itself, and I
yeah.
think another point that I think is actually really relevant for David and for you, Brett. I think between the four of us, David basically has a platform with a lot of like traditional artists or like these virtual artists that he's created that have built really solid followings and listenerships on traditional platforms. And then you come from a world, and so do we. I mean, but you more particularly around this article, like you come from a world of arguing why content should be collectible, and you've been preaching that narrative for a while. And I guess this is like a duo question between David, and Brett is like, what do you think is the most misunderstood part about collecting content versus engaging with it on traditional platforms? And how do you bridge that link better? David, coming from the world of having accounts that have a lot of followers and engagement on traditional media, or like, I guess, a different IP that you've developed over the years, and blockchain, Brett, you coming from a world of just like religiously preaching the fact that we should be minting content, collecting content. I often think about that myself. I'm curious how you guys see that.
I can go first. So I think where we are right now is these are still two different worlds. So the people who are engaging on Instagram with a piece of like Death Pixie content or Kai content is still really different overall than the person who's in Hume world. Those are more still crypto native users who are earning points and then have some type of sync to use those points. But I do think we're on the precipice of that changing, not just in the Hume context, but I think in crypto overall over the next 6 months to 2 years. But I can tell you, like in the Hume context, we're introducing more features that somebody on Instagram or on TikTok would be used to. So next week, we're going to introduce AI chat. And the way you're going to be able to chat with each artist is you'll have like a set amount of messages that you're able to send. But the way you get your messages is points. And the only way to get points is to collect cards. And you'll be able to go to your artist page, see how many messages you have to be able to chat with Death Pixie or Kai that week, and see how many cards you've collected, which is allowing you to have those conversations with your favorite artist. So I think over the next couple of years, we're going to see more and more companies and creators start to bridge this gap where you're able to use super on-chain mechanisms, on-chain principles to have an initial base, and then eventually add features into that product that are for normies, but have them come in and be like, oh, this is like collecting Pokemon cards, or this is similar to a game I've played before, and not even realize it's having on chain. And I do think that's how we're thinking about it at Hume. But I do think everybody on this call and going beyond, I'm sure Brett, a lot of founders you're talking to, and a lot of like Web 2 founders coming into Web 3 for the first time have different versions of this that we're going to see a lot more of over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think it's like I don't know. It's like, I guess maybe like a multi-billion-dollar question is like, how do you bridge to to existing users, to existing fans of those artists even? Like, I think one of the best places to start is with existing artists that have had success in crypto, and then seeing if you can bridge over their fan base that's not in crypto. And I think even that is difficult right now. And so, yeah, it's how do you kind of do that? I think like if you zoom out a bit though, or get them out, like there's been a lot of progress. Like I was saying, like in 2018, it was like, can digital art be valuable, right? And it's like, okay, so we've obviously like the consumer behavior or the psychology has evolved a lot from there. And I think that's kind of the biggest factor is like the psychology of people evolving, understanding, and kind of getting educated of like, all right, like, why am I going to do this? And when you look at how, crypto artists had success versus like some of these other categories that are newer that are earlier on, it takes like those sort of success stories for people to understand. Like it took X copy to sell a big piece in order for Mad Dog Jones to come in and drop one Nifty Gateway, and then eventually Beeple. And like so we're kind of, I think it's a bit of a timing thing where like you need to see some success from that thesis of like, oh, these things are worth something, like it works by collecting an artist early on in their career. Like for instance, like Daniel Allen's a great example. Like, look, I mean, I'll challenge you to try to buy a Too Close edition on Sound, his first release, and see what you can buy that for. It's edition of 25. I would bet you cannot get it for less than an 8, which is like sort of, people wouldn't think that that's the case. Like music NFTs are dead, right? But like it's valuable, right? Matthew Chain doesn't have a single music edition listed. So I think that like there is like the success is still very early, and we were on a ride in 2021. I think everyone was. But it's not, but that part of it's not even over. Like the scarce assets in collecting artists is still there, and it's going to grow. And then it's like, okay, well, where's the new users? And I think that they're closer to this other stuff that you guys have all been experimenting with, which is like more open editions, lower price, collector behavior, rewarding collectors immediately so that they feel a higher sense of like more gratification up front. Like the gratification from collecting an artist and then 5 years later them being successful and making money is a journey. People, it's new, completely new for some of these types of content. And they're, so that's going to take some time in and of itself to show off. And then even then people that are going to come in after it's a longer time horizon, right? So how do you kind of give them immediate gratification from playing the game, from starting to collect? And that's where you guys have done awesome stuff around incentivized minting. I think that's like a big step forward. Leaning into like higher edition, lower price, incentivizing people. This is kind of like the new type of ads, right? Like you basically are giving someone else's token, the artist's own token, maybe the platform or the product's token that the artist is on, to the user for doing something, and they're immediately getting something back. And like that makes a big difference. I also think it's like, what's the utility is of the content, is the content itself, is like consuming the content. So, or like Patreon style type features, like getting closer to the artist or relationships with the rest of the community, which I think you can do even better on chain, because of like, there's just more substance, there's more fabric to work with, to surface there. But yeah, I mean, I guess how do you sort of bridge that is the tough question. I guess that was a long answer to that.
The incentivized mints is definitely the most underutilized or misunderstood part of the funnel for creators right now, for existing and new creators. Frankly, I feel like new creators will have a better idea grasping the idea of incentivized mints than existing creators, because the reason as to why people collect is so different, and it requires a complete rewiring from the old era of bringing content on chain to now this era. Would you guys agree? Would you guys disagree?
I would definitely agree with that. I think that you mentioned like new era of creators on chain. And I think it's a really good way of putting it, because to Brett's example, if you were a creator that was in crypto in 2021, you were more or less like all in on crypto. Like that was a big part of your identity. You were very active on Twitter. You're very active in the crypto community. These days, the artists that I'm working with, that Chevy, I'd like to say that you're working with on Blueprint, Lucas, the podcast host that you're working with, a lot of sense. And even the artists that you guys are developing, David, like it's not starting from a crypto first creator. You know what I mean? It's like, it's an artist that has a traditional following and now they're bringing their work on chain. But I would like to say there's similarities here where we don't expect the creator to be extremely active on chain for their content to be successful in the first place. Obviously it helps a lot, but these creators and these artists, they have aspirations of having a huge fan base and having success in the real world. And crypto is not the number one priority for them anymore. And so I think that changes the perspective on why someone should collect, because it's actually easier to justify collecting an X copy or someone that's a crypto native artist because they've really put their full brand behind it. And now I think the challenge is basically like, why would I buy something on chain from an artist who's not clearly spending their whole life developing their brand in the crypto world? And I think it's very much still an unsolved question.
Well, how else do you get upside in that creator? Like if you like an artist early on and you think they're awesome and you want to get ups, like how do you do it otherwise?
I think that that's the way to do it, but I think the disconnect is that the people who want upside in that artist is very different. It's a very different class of people. I think that in 2021, when a crypto person wanted upside in a creator, it made a lot of sense if that creator was crypto native and they understood the collector dynamics and floor prices and all this kind of stuff. I think now the question is like, how do you give traditional fans upside in their favorite artist, but in a way that they're not already familiar with doing? Like a lot of these fans have never touched crypto before. A lot of these artists have never touched crypto before. And so you're offering them proverbial upside in these digital collectibles or in these tokens. But I think the disconnect is that they're not currently seen as valued, or the upside is not seen as like a real thing. Because I don't think that there's currently social dynamics that make that feel culturally relevant in those circles. Like if I go and collect a song on chain or a podcast or something right now, that doesn't mean something to my friends in the real world. It only means something to people on Farcaster or people on Twitter. And even that is still not like a very swag thing to do in the same way that it was like changing your PFP or rocking this thing that was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I just think that currently there's still this vacuum where the number of people that actually value collecting digital content and value having on-chain upside in these creators is still extremely, extremely small.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think like, you know, it is a spectrum of like the type of person, like someone that I feel like you start with, these big higher editions and you start to feel and understand it a bit more. And then as you want more exposure to the artist, you lean deeper in to things that are more focused on upside. So like, and I think like, yeah, and there is upside even in like the more higher edition stuff too, right? Like if you buy something for $1 that ends up being worth $10, like that's pretty good. Like that's pretty good upside. I mean, I feel like historically we're so used to like you got to spend $1,000 or $5,000, then it has to become more than $100,000 in order for it to be like a big win in crypto. And I think it's going to lean more towards like smaller number, like a smaller amount of bigger.
I would also like start to challenge what upside actually means. Like I think that there's a very basic like financial upside of, especially in this current meta of like going from $2 to $6, $10 or whatever. But I think that there's also room for upside on the utility front. So this might get you future access to the creator, or on the social front it might get you status in the future, similar to like having a punk or a Bored Ape. So I think that there's a lot more to explore, and there's a lot more experiment on what exactly upside in a creator looks like outside of just purely financial upside.
Well, I think the other question is like, how do you create upside in an ecosystem? Like, how do you create upside across Coop Records or across Pods or across Blueprint? And I think that's what makes what everybody here is working on interesting is there's a platform and there are creators on that platform, and there are ways that collecting from those creators can tie together for something greater. And then the pitch to the creators becomes like, you're part of this larger thing. You're part of this larger ecosystem.
Yep. And I actually think that, Chevy, something you and I were talking about at dinner the other week is that the platforms are starting to take a bigger role in the onboarding of the creator and their ability to know how to succeed in this world. I think that in the past, you would kind of just throw them in the deep end and give them an upload button and be like, go and figure it out. And, Adam, I don't want to speak for you, but you're obviously very hands-on with your creators in terms of how they're uploading their content, what platform they're releasing it on, what network they're releasing it on, what the edition size looks like, what the price looks like. And the same for us, where we've really tried to make it as easy as possible on the artist by saying, just send us a song and a cover art and trust us to kind of guide you in this world when it comes to the type of content you're putting on chain, the format of it. And now getting into creator coins and sort of this new level, it's a whole added level of complexity that I think in a lot of ways actually does require a lot of handholding right now to make an artist or a creator feel comfortable to release a coin or something beyond just putting their actual content on chain.
Yeah, and it is like it's a spectrum too of like the speculation, right? Where ideally we want less speculation up front. Like you want it. I agree. Upside is not just financial. It's like the relationship with the artist, the community, features and perks, like these kind of more Patreon style things, which lead like these types of features, and we haven't had a lot of that yet. Like, what happens past the mint, right? And I think that the higher edition things lean more into that, like, oh, it collects a certain number of coins or some like a higher, like, a lower price edition coin, like that can work well with these style features that are giving you more, like, I guess, social upside, or so just more access or more exclusive content or more, community interaction. And ideally, you actually don't want it to be all speculation. Like, ideally, the upside comes after enjoying the content. Like, maybe in crypto, most things are 90% speculative or 95% speculative. And now it's like, how do you move that to be more like 30% speculative? And people are actually enjoying. And because when it comes to content, like on-chain content, really, like the base utility is the content itself. It's people consuming that thing, right? It's like a little different than other things on chain where like there's more activity loop on chain where you're earning yield and then you're staking that, you're restaking that, or if you're in a game, you're doing all the different actions, and so that was always a big question back in the day. What happens after the mint? And I think the obvious answer is like Patreon style features, right? Creator economy type platform features. And I think that works out really, really well with like that higher end of the top of the funnel spectrum, to onboard those people. Like the immediate gratification can be like just like those types of interactions. And then I think what happens is you're starting to realize you have ownership, you have upside in this artist, like upside in a lot of ways, not just financial, but definitely you realize it's financial too. And then you start to realize, well, why would I'm going to spend time on these other artists that aren't doing this? Like this, like I'd rather spend my time I felt that personally, right? Like when I started collecting music NFTs, I legitimately moved Spinamp into my Spotify slot and was like spending all my discovery time making sure I was keeping up with every single music NFT artist, more so even than I was trying to discover like other artists. I felt like anytime I found a song, if I really, really liked it, I could buy. I could start to like invest my time into those artists, get into it. And like I think that is like that's a big thing. It's a big psychological thing that people aren't really understanding it. That's going to happen is people are going to feel more connected to these artists, these creators that they can actually collect.
Brett, I actually want to get your take on something. Jacob actually tweeted this out, founder of Zora, in response to when will I be able to mint NFTs again? And he effectively said, our view is NFTs are not the most effective token standard for at-scale ownership and are not conducive to liquid and efficient markets, which are crucial. Do you have a take on this or like any sort of response, given that you've just been an NFT bull and feel like this is the best mechanism for this creator-fan relationship?
Again, I mean, I feel like it's not one or the other. Like you have coins serve a purpose. Like there's features that are better than NFTs for coins. They're more liquid and they can be more viral. Like if something takes off, really, like it can, because it's more liquid and it's more open to new entrants, like it can impact the price quicker. It can also go the other way, right? Like it also can have A brands that leave your ecosystem really quickly. Like I think that a long-term investor, like someone that really loves the artist, really wants to be kind of a part of the journey for the long run, is going to be excited about collecting a limited edition NFT and holding it for a long period of time. Versus like maybe a more new entrant wants to be able to get out, right? Wants to be able to leave. But as you kind of get more deeper into their ecosystem, I would imagine that like a new entrant is more likely to come in through a coin, obviously, than like a limited edition NFT, right? And then you kind of just lean. I mean, I think it's a funnel. We lean down from there.
I do think it's interesting that like coins are probably a better mechanism for virality, or just like have a more reflexive kind of like aspect. But they also
tank in price, right?
Right,
like,
exactly. And I think that,
but I think there's new methods. A lot of it is because people are just releasing. It can be confusing if you're just like releasing a lot of coins. Like, I mean, it's not much different than if you're releasing a lot of NFTs. I just think it's harder to maintain attention. It's hard to maintain attention in general, whether it's an NFT or a coin. So coins are going to reflect that more. Like the coin is going to go lower in price more often than NFT. It's kind of like investing in a private company versus like a liquid token. Like the market goes down like crazy. People keep the cost of the company closer to where they invested versus like the public market is you're going down all the way with wherever the market's going. And so I think it's it's a spectrum. Both will work. And so I was going with that is that it feels like coins, and Adam, you probably could talk to this even better, is like it probably makes more sense to be more canonical. Like you don't want to have a ton of coins probably, right? Like because it's going to be hard to sustain attention for all of them. Like it might be a good idea to centralize your attention around less coins and then build that funnel towards the more scarce stuff over time.
Yeah. Right now I see like a spectrum right now of, okay, you have coins here, you have limited edition NFTs here, and then where I think pods is right now is we effectively just do open editions that are forever, right? So it's always going to be mintable for 007 ETH or like $1.50. And our take is that the value in this is around the social graph and like that creator fan relationship and how you can kind of leverage the data with it to build that relationship and offer exclusive access, all that kind of stuff. But I think that's kind of where my perspective came in on like, how do we engineer upside that's not necessarily financial? Because with these open forever editions, maybe that's kind of more off the table in the sense of the content itself. But yeah, there's maybe more areas there to like experiment with. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised about like how well the forever editions are working. Like it really does literally like eliminate the financial upside component argument of like the NFT, right? It's like that's pretty cool that those are working. I do think that the incentivizements are helping. Like they're getting other tokens with upside, probably helps. Add the element back in. But yeah, that's a big part too. People talk about first party data a lot. Like a lot of these creators don't know anything about their audiences. Like whatever creator content platform you're on, like you probably don't know much about who's watching your stuff, or have a way to engage with them. So I've seen this, told as like a solution a lot for, being able to build a profile around all your users and know what they're doing, what they're engaging with, for sure.
Well, that was Bello in hindsight. And creators, you tell them really cool things, but they wouldn't know what to do with it. So then you had to build messaging for them to reach. But then that's just like another problem because there's no proper messaging infrastructure to reach your entire top of funnel. And then over time, they just really don't care at all about their on-chain audience. But what they do care about is having their social handles linked to their wallet addresses. But even when they have that data, they don't really care about doing anything with that data. They just like teases and scratches an itch for like a couple hours, and then they churn. So oftentimes you have to actually tell the creator what you have to do with the data, even though one of the big proponents of crypto is like, oh, you get access to all this data. You get to learn more about your audience, but creators don't really care. At least the long tail creators don't care about that. Maybe the 1% do, that are really taking this seriously and are treating it as like a full-time thing for them, and understand what to do with that data. Because those who understand have an advantage on how to run a creator business, frankly.
Yeah, I'd put the question back on you because I mean I feel like this next move, okay, you have lower priced, higher volume editions, whether they're forever editions or open editions. You have coins now that can scale. You have better user experience. You're getting some mass of creators onboarded. There's still that issue of like, how do you get that regular, like even taking an existing artist like a Daniel Allen that has 1 million monthly listeners but 20,000 collectors, okay, take him for example. How do you go and get those? How do you bridge the gap to those 1 million monthly listeners that aren't his collectors yet? And then even like that next creator that is even less crypto native that is like coming into it, right? And you're running like, I mean, Adam, all of you guys are bringing them on, right? That feels like the next big question, right? I mean, it always has been a big question, but it feels like we're really there, ready to work on that. Like, what is the best method to bring on?
Yeah, I don't know. My takeaway, Cooper, you have a lot more experience working with music artists in the context of Daniel Allen, but not until other platforms recognize a creator's platform like they do with a website as a reference point to send traffic to. And if those platforms in question don't have like crypto integrated as some part of their utility, as some part of their features, then that whole conversion, like you say, Daniel has 1 million monthly listeners. That's primarily on Apple Music and Spotify. Unless there's a way to convert all those listeners from platform A to then send them to platform B, then that just will never happen. And then Daniel needs to use his traditional distribution outlets like his Instagram stories, his Instagram posts, his Twitter, his TikTok as a way to communicate his top level distribution to send traffic to another platform in question.
More importantly, get them to buy a ticket to a show. And I think that's the biggest disconnect that I've heard from artists, is that these people don't feel real. Like these crypto people and these collectors and whatnot, like they just don't feel like real fans, and they're probably not going to show up and like come to a show and actually be there for the music and dancing and whatnot. And so I think that there's just not a belief that collectors are currently valued the same way that fans are, because they don't do the same actions that fans would take. Like a fan will go and buy a $20 ticket to a show because they love a song, they want to have this super memorable experience. A crypto collector will be like, hey, I just bought your shit for $100. Like you need to now do a FaceTime to me, and like have this like really high expectation of what they get in return. And so there's just a huge disconnect between what a fan looks like to an artist and then like what a collector looks like to an artist who's not super into crypto.
You really think that
thing,
that's
like,
the
really
collector profile?
Well, that's
110%.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
it. But like these
Yes.
collectors, like artists don't want collectors clawing at their throats for an airdrop, you know, like a liquidity event from all the patronage that they've spent in their ecosystem. Artists don't want to do that, you know. A person who's showing up to Billie Eilish's first concert and buying that T-shirt and holding on to that memorabilia when she's on the Grammys, you know, or selling at Wembley Stadium, she'll never be clawing at her throat for an airdrop.
Where's my airdrop?
Where's my airdrop, Billy? You're like, no, like that's not going to be a thing. Whereas in this circle, it is. It 100% is.
Yeah, but I mean, ideally, you like, and I think there are people in crypto that are genuinely music fans that are finding artists that they like.
10.
Yes, but those aren't the people that are moving the needles, and like aren't those are the people that are not paying the rent for the creators.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, those are people that are not paying the rent?
Are not paying rent, like are not paying the rents and the mortgages and the credit card expenses and the living expenses.
They're not paying the bills. Right.
They're not paying the bills.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is such a cool piece of music. Oh, like retweet, you know, cute. Oh, collected this 50 cents. Really like this. Cool. But you need volumes of that. You know, you need volumes of that.
But you guys are putting up volume, right?
We are, but we're
putting up tens of thousands
volume.
of mints.
Yes,
sometimes.
but we're masking that volume and using like crypto behavior and leveraging crypto behavior to try to show the traditional world that there is money to be made over here. And we're trying to basically obfuscate a lot of that behind the scenes by just helping these creators get paid, right? So that they keep publishing their content. It's like a weird dance that we're doing over here.
Yeah.
Yep.
But like existing creators are already doing this dance by like gaming the algorithm on YouTube and creating like clickbait or creating songs that are going to go viral on TikTok, and they're already trying to like gamify or like trying to game these systems and make them work for them. So I don't really see how this is different. I just think that there's more clear upfront incentives or like maybe a little bit of a aggressive, I guess, approach.
To David's point, it's just two completely different worlds, and the behaviors that you're targeting to get each user to complete that action are entirely different. Crypto user will collect because there's an incentive and there's a future airdrop. A fan will collect because there is access to that creator's time, energy, and attention in some way, shape, or form. And so like building for these two people, you have to treat them as entirely separate because they don't want the same things. And I think this is what's historically made it really difficult for any consumer crypto platform to scale, is because they are two completely different forks in the road. And it's very difficult to know like which one to prioritize.
My mental framework for this recently has been like, it's basically two business lines. And the goal should be if you can get 20% of the, let's call it the social media platform and Spotify business line to translate into crypto, and you can get 20% of the on-chain native audience to translate to these other platforms, that should be the current goal. And I think that is
that framing.
achievable. I think that's achievable.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I do think like I do like that approach, David, because this I've always approached this when talking to creators is like this is an entirely net additive thing that you can be doing on top of everything that you already are doing, right? And I think that approach or like the way that you're thinking about it, David, makes it much more digestible that these are two business lines and you kind of need to optimize this business line. And then there's like this cross-pollination that you need to be trying to make happen over time.
Yeah, and then what is the thing that is on for Pods or CoopRex or Hume or Blueprint that allows that 20% conversion to happen? And I think it's different depending on the medium and the context, but everybody needs to figure out what their mechanism is to make the 20% conversion rate happen both ways.
Yeah.
Right. Which is these top of the funnel tools, or, you know, and however you kind of do it. I mean, once you guys figure it out, that would be great. And then I can make it.
Then we can all make it.
Then we can all make it.
One interesting anecdote that we've seen at Pods is like, okay, we all run layer 3 quests maybe on a weekly basis. The one thing that's really interesting is when we run a layer 3 quest with Brandon and Daria as a guest, it gets like 5x more listens. And maybe that's one example of you kind of like bridging this like on-chain speculator to on-chain fan is like, how do you create content that appeals to the speculator? And I think that's probably more difficult for music than it is like content creation, like podcasts or videos. But I do think it's like an interesting stat or anecdote that we've seen at Pods is like, yeah,
I think the conversion of the user you want, like a user that actually cares about the content that's collecting, is happening more and more over time. Like, I think that is obviously what we need, right? And like times like this where being in music NFTs or being in whatever types of content on chain isn't like that lucrative for collectors is exactly the kind of thing that's building the base for like people that really are there for the right reasons. And yeah, so I think, and I'm excited to see the experience you guys run to bridge to normies, to bridge to people that are coming in through socials, that are coming in through whatever other content platforms those artists are on, creators are on. I think we're at the foundation, at the root of a big tree here.
Just getting started. Love it. Sweet, guys. Well, I think that is all the time we have. Brett, thank you so much, brother, for coming on Not A Cartel and joining us. I know this won't be your last appearance.
Wow.
But
when you make it, you'll come back.
When you make it, you'll come back
Which
on.
is when you guys make it, so...
Well, yeah, Coop's got a long way to go. I don't know. We're gonna be on like episode 100 by then.
But Dave had a huge comeback there. Like I almost went mute and video off for a second after he started spitting bars.
Lucas,
awesome,
take it away.
guys. Well, that is all we have for this episode of Not A Cartel. If you are still listening, you can collect this episode at pods.media/notacartel, where all episodes are on-chain and online on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and everywhere else that you listen to your podcast. We love it. Thank you, guys. Awesome little episode. What? Why was that funny? Man, I'm just trying to close this out.
We're all just cheering you on, talking about collecting the podcast.
We love it, guys. We'll see you on the next snack.
God damn it.
Go, Lucas.